Stiff crosswinds. Doesn't sound good to me, mate.
Welcome to a day in the life of flight school. Today I'm going to be showing you exactly what it's like to be training to become a pilot here in the UK. And believe me, oh wow, it is different from university. So my good friend Matt is who we're going to be shadowing today, and he's been training to become a pilot now for the last few years. Now, flight school is notoriously expensive, so we went to Stapleford Aerodrome, one of the cheaper flight schools in the UK, but you're looking at about £90,000 to become a qualified pilot on average. So when we arrived at campus, we had to check in for our plane hire booking, and secondly I had to sign a few forms. 10 points to anybody who can guess what they were saying in the comments down below. And then we picked up 2 headsets from reception and then headed to the bar, not because I'm a nervous flyer, but because I needed some water. See, even as a passenger, I wouldn't fly and drink in these planes in case I was called into action, okay? The thought just sometimes goes through your head after you see all the movies.
Stiff crosswinds. Doesn't sound good to me, mate. I'm a fair-weathered flyer, mate. Look at this. The camera's going to pick this up.
Yeah, it's windy, isn't it?
I'm going up in this tin box, mate. Oh, mate, no way are we going up in this.
It's light plane as well.
Mate, you'll see it in a second. The plane's moving around.
Yeah, it wobbles.
Refuelling?
We are just checking the amount of fuel that's in the tanks. So that's me checking how much fuel is in the tank.
I'll be going for a nice, relaxing fly up in the sky. Summer day, no wind. It's fine. Matt's a good friend from secondary school. We're going to do an interview with him later on, but he's always dreamed of being a pilot. Today's the day, 7 years later on. He's going to take me up into the sky.
Yes.
What can we expect, Matt, today's conditions? What are we looking at, roughly?
It's going to be bumpy.
Bumpy, nice.
The wind's pretty much 90 degrees from the runway, so yeah, it's going to be fun.
When conditions are slightly more windy, do you ever feel like, right, I'm a bit nervous, or is training like you're ready for it?
Oh, ready for it, man.
Hey, that's what
as soon as you see other people flying around, you know it's all good.
Yeah.
The takeoff might be a bit swayy, but no, it'll be fine, man. So I'm going to do all the checks now.
Yeah.
And then just really lovely juggling.
So we're checking the lights, the oil. Yo, this is small, bro. Oh, shit. Yeah, this is the important part, mate. This is,
you gotta check this. Without oil, bad news.
Check
it, make sure not all the screws are in, nothing's gonna fall off, nothing has fallen off.
Yeah, and it's all good.
Yeah, we're gonna taxi over there, that's where the fuel is.
Yeah.
Give it a little dash of fuel, just to be safe.
Oh, look at this. Yo, bro. Hey, this is tight as well, bro. All right, nice. Feet up here. Give it a nice slam shot.
Yeah.
More?
Yeah. And then just flip that. And quickly start her up.
What are you actually doing to start it up?
The first thing is, for this one, fuel pump on to make sure that it's just the noise you can hear. And then it has a thing called a choke in this plane, introducing fuel to the engine. If it's the first flight of the day, you want to have that quite full. Fuel pump back on, turn the key, wait for it to start.
Oh, mate. And right now we're heading over to get some extra fuel.
2 fuel tanks, 1 in each wing.
And switch between them mid-flight if we need to.
Yeah, everyone's different. Some people do 15 minutes.
And then the steering in this plane fascinated me.
It has a Castorin nose wheel, which means there's no linkage. It's like a trolley wheel.
Sure.
So the only way to turn it is by braking each wheel separately. So to turn right, you brake right. £2.35 a litre.
Maybe a tiny bit looser.
Yeah, so you just got to loosen it down there. Pull people up.
So here we are, just putting on the headphones because you actually can't hear each other inside of the plane. The noise is too much, isn't it?
Yeah, it's too loud.
And right here, what are you doing? You're talking to pretty much air control, everyone
So I'm
all
talking
around.
to Stapleford at the moment, just to get the runway, the active runway at Stapleford, and the pressure, current air pressure there.
And then here, we're just taking a look at all the maps on the right-hand side of my cockpit, and then you've got all the dials as well. You're doing startup checks right now?
This is the power checks,
checks.
Just to make sure we're on the right fuel tank, the fuel pump's on, and then we run it to like 75% of what its max RPM is, just to make sure it all kind of holds.
I mean, here we are on the runway right now, powering up. Final little calls to the local area, and that, mate, we're off.
That's it.
talk us through this process as you're doing it, Matt. What's going through your head?
Just keep it straight. Especially on a windy day like this, you just want to keep it straight. You don't want to be veering off into the grass or anything like that.
No, it was super windy, wasn't it?
Yeah, just making sure your airspeed's alive and it's climbing. It's I think the wind was from the right, so you would want a bit of right aileron,
Nice.
but not too much. But it was all done really with the brakes and the rudder.
Is takeoff the hardest for pilots?
No, I'd say landing's probably the hardest. In terms of, it depends what you mean by hard. I would say takeoff is full concentration, but landing is it's hard to get like be a consistently good person at landing a plane. It's always different.
Mate, consistency is key, like in everything.
It's...
And again, I was probably asking you right here, when we're up in the sky, you know, we're flying at what, 3,000 to 4,000 feet up?
We were cruising at 2,200.
So we're cruising 2,200 feet.
Yeah.
And once we're up in the sky, it's more about stability. There's the white cliffs of Dover.
There it is.
And it's actually saying it's easier to fly over the water as well, and France in the distance.
Yeah, it's smoother over the water generally, because it just heats up less. So on a hot day, the ground produces thermals, rising columns of air, so if you fly over them, you affected them. And at about 2,000 feet, you still feel them. They got up to that height.
Coming back in on ourselves, you can kind of see we're just crossing over somewhere.
Yeah, we're on our way to Whitstable, I think.
On our way to Whitstable, and mate, there's so many dials. What are the key ones you're monitoring during the flight?
Speed and altitude. Oil pressure and fuel pressure every 30 minutes.
Yep.
Because if one of those is in the red and not producing, then it's a bit of a problem.
And we switched over the old fuel tank as well there, left to right.
Done every 30 minutes.
I mean, here we are just cruising around now, heading back towards the
I can't remember
the Stableford Aerodrome. Going over the motorway, we're quite a low cruising altitude, but it's all about the turning is just adjusting it's not called a stick, what do you call it?
Joystick.
And you're saying this plane can go 40 degrees max, sort of?
Yeah, about 45.
About 45.
I reckon. I mean, you could go the full 90 if you wanted to.
And this plane?
Yeah.
Oh, damn. And you were saying it could also glide us all the way home if the engines failed.
Not all the way. It depends how far away home is. But this plane in particular is really light. It doesn't like going down and losing speed, so it just glides forever. Or it goes further than other planes in its class.
Sure. Which is a great one to train in and learn in.
Yeah.
And here we're just so the runway's in the distance. We're trying to line it roughly up with the runway.
Yeah,
now.
Trying to line up with the runway and just keep the altitude good, because we don't want to end up in the hedges, or we don't want to end up too high, because if we end up too high, we're going to overshoot the runway.
Yeah, we can see we're coming in now. So slow decreases as we... And you also, before we turned off the engine slightly before we landed, just to slow down the travelling speed.
That's it. We want to get down to our final, what they call the speed you maintain on final approach. And this plane hates slowing down, like I just said.
Yeah.
So you want to do it quite early, cut the whole power, hold the nose up a bit, so just it loses speed, then add the flaps.
Nice.
And then just get the speed down to your landing speed.
Man, look at that, directly in the centre.
Yeah, ignore the noise.
We must have.
That sounds
it was
horrific.
actually a really smooth landing,
Yeah,
but the GoPro makes it sound... Mate, compared to the takeoff, you know, I think there was slightly less wind, but we landed slap bang in the centre of the runway. How hard is that to do?
I mean, I was impressed with myself.
Right, if I move this, you can see the
Yeah,
flaps changing. You see it?
Yeah.
The direct. So just adjusting this changes the complete direction of the plane.
Yeah,
And it's both sides, isn't it?
tilts it, yeah.
Oh, mate, it's crazy how much of a difference it makes as well. So soft, mate, so soft.
A bit of metal.
When you're taking off, what are you doing realistically? You're checking.
When you advance the throttle, which is this, all the way to your takeoff power, you're kind of just looking out for making sure all your kind of engine parameters are in the green. And then once you gain some speed, you just want to make sure your airspeed comes alive, because if it's not reading anything, it means that tube just up there is blocked. You don't know how fast you're going.
You too, see you later. Right, Matt, well, because the camera fell over. Alright, so Matt, we just flew up all around Dover, all around Southend and back. How would you say the flight was today? Because it was a bit bumpy, but pretty standard.
It was standard, it was good fun. It wasn't too bad for you. I remember you said you were going to be a bit scared. But
Stylistic choice if you want to keep the AirPods in now. Alright guys, so it's a few days later on now after the flight, and I've got Matt here to do a Q&A about the flight and his journey into becoming a pilot. So first off, Matt, looking back on it, it was quite a decent flight day. I mean, it was windy to start with, as you can definitely hear on the video.
I think the main thing is clouds. Like the clouds are well above us, so that's like the biggest thing. But yeah, it was a bit turbulent.
Bit turbulent, yeah.
It wasn't nothing crazy. It was a bit windy on the ground.
Our personal flight path up on the screen right now. We're going to take a little look at it. So we started off.
That is Stableford, yeah.
And we're that blue line, aren't we?
We're the blue line. So we took off heading southwest, London over there. Made a left turn, and then we headed towards Southend, which is there. Dark blue line you can all see going around. That is all Southend's airspace.
Yeah.
And the airport is right in the middle where that M is. That M just means like bad weather, or like it's medium, like pretty bad weather.
So we flew directly over Southend Airport.
Directly over the airport. I remember like when I first started learning, that just seems like impossible.
I thought
if you think about it, it's like the safest place, because when planes are taking off and landing, they're going to be nowhere near you. They're either going to be on the ground or like.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're not in the way of their flight path at all.
Have you ever come level with a carrier plane, like a passenger plane? No.
No.
Even during their takeoff and you're going.
No. All that airspace I was talking about, that's above us. That's like for them. So yeah, once we were over at Southend, we just headed towards Sheerness. Not that far across water, because you don't want an engine failure over water. Obviously, you kind of want to spend as little time over there as possible.
Okay, I was actually thinking this. I was like, let's say that again. God forbid you fell asleep or passed out while I was flying. I was like, would I rather land it in water, or would I rather try and land it on the actual land?
Go for the ground.
Would really?
Yeah,
Even as
yeah.
a complete newbie?
Yeah.
Damn.
I'll say go for the ground.
No, well then next time if it ever happens.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to fly over this large extent over this wind farm. That's just too far. Like, that's scary.
Would that create turbulence, that wind farm as well?
I don't know, that's a good question. I've never flown over a wind farm, so I can't say.
Yeah.
We flew over Whitstable, Herne Bay, and then there's Dover, that little semicircle thing. You can pretty much flew exactly the same route back.
And when we was kind of flying this route, in your head, you had a rough idea of what way we was going to fly. How do you know you don't accidentally, drift off course by 25 kilometers? This app
is the holy grail of general aviation flying. Sky Demon. And it's literally, it's literally a GPS for the sky. I mean, you don't get taught this. This is not like, it's not in the learning syllabus at all of the PPL.
Yeah.
Usually it's all map work and timings and stuff like that. Yeah, it was good fun.
It was actually very good fun. But Matt, I want to talk to you again. I mentioned earlier on that you've been wanting to be a pilot now since secondary school, since back in the day. But how does the journey start for, let's say, somebody out there wanting to become a pilot? What's the cheapest you could possibly get qualified for, essentially?
Yeah, so it's so hard to explain because it's so in depth, and like I remember when I was first trying to research about it, how to become a pilot on the internet, you never get a straight answer, and you just get yourself even more confused. Basically, there's two routes of going about it. They're called the integrated route and the modular route. Integrated is going through a flight school, for example, CAE, L3, and that's where they give you the full uniform, and you're there for 18 months. And that is going from nothing to being able to apply into commercial jets. So it's like fast track if you pass everything on time, obviously. But that typically costs, like you said, about 90,000 plus. There's the modular route, which basically is you get all the parts yourself and you don't go through one flight school. For example, I got my PPL at Biggin Hill. Yeah. And I've got my ATPLs at Stableford. I can go somewhere else and get my other stuff. So as long as I get everything I need, all the qualifications, it's all the same. I would budget for like 50, 60 grand. Yeah. Which is significantly cheaper than the integrated course.
And does it take the same amount of time, or is it slightly longer to do it that way?
It all depends how free you are and if you've got the money to go. The beauty of the modular route is you can do your PPL and then you can have a year off, work at a job, save money up, start your next thing.
Nice. Hey, that's really useful info, and if you definitely drop a like if this is the first time you've heard that. A lot of exams, I'm guessing, that you have to take. How hard are they? And how many have you taken, roughly, to get to this point? I mean, even if we're at uni, right, university exams, you've got an exam every other week. It gets quite intense.
The PPL, there's 9 exams, which are all pretty much straightforward. Like, they're not that difficult. But then you go into the stage I've just completed, which is the ATPLs, which stands for the Airline Transport Pilot's License, which is all theory. The hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Harder than year 11 business studies.
That was tough for me. that touched the spot there. You can either go the UK licence, which is just 13 exams, or you can go the EU licence, which is also 13 exams, or you can do dual, which is what crazy people do, which is what I did.
Oh, you did it?
And I did 26 exams in 7 months.
so a lot of exams, exactly like you.
Yeah, it's super intense.
What's the next steps into trying to get a job at a commercial airline or private jets, or is there more exams to do?
No, there's a couple more exams to do. Skill tests mainly. End goal is commercial stuff. I've still got a few licenses and ratings to get before I can do that, but hopefully by the end of this year, Ryanair I'm coming for you.
Amazing, amazing. Remember to drop a like, because if we get 150 likes when Matt's working as a commercial pilot, he's definitely going to take me up and we're gonna
give you a tour of the cockpit.
What they saw today was pretty much a day in the life
Yeah.
of a trainee pilot, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly that.
Any questions? Feel free to comment them and I'll get Matt to answer them.
I'll happily do it.